Almost time, John. Ready? Okay. Hello, everybody. I would like to call this meeting to order. Are there any announcements? John, who's with us electronically?
Present, nobody is.
What? Okay, sorry. I react. Okay, I'll let that happen. So, let's go to approving the agenda. I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
This is moved and seconded. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. Public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board? Ms. Alyssa, we're going to discuss this with you when yours comes up, if that's all right.
Yep.
So we'll wait for that. We'll follow through. Okay. Not hearing anything regarding this, let's move the consent calendar. Are there any items any of the managers would like to pull regarding these items? Don't all pipe up at once. Okay, I have two quick items. Item G, there are just some questions. And item I. Outside of that, I would like to make a motion to approve all of the other consent calendar items. Do I have a second?
Second.
This one moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Rick,
I
Oh,
did say
sorry.
aye.
forgive me.
Sorry,
No, that's okay.
trying to be a little loud.
Just get technical on you. Forgive me. Okay, the first item is, did I say I and G?
G and I. Yep.
G and I, excuse me. Okay, let's go to item G real quick. I just have a question. The $2,750 to, let me look for it real quick here. To the grant to Kurt and Kathy Cron, I believe. In 1 moment. Taking forever. Okay, pass it. Did I find it?
It's the big purple
The big purple spot.
splotch on the,
There it is. Thank goodness. Is that
different shape.
Oh, wrong shape. Okay. Oh, this one? Let's see.
This looks like this.
Oh, yeah, I have. Oh, okay. Easier to find it that way. Sorry. You might have to help me.
It's gone past it.
Okay, it's not that one.
Together or something.
Let's see me at work. John, can you, thank you, sir. Okay. Saved by Mr. Engineer. Okay. What was my question again? That was the 2750, correct? Approve the stewardship grant with options to increase to $5,000. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so the only thing I have to say about that is, if that occurs, what I want to say to the managers, that they resubmit the memorandum and we go to WCD to see if we approve that. Okay. That's all I have on that, so I'd like to make a motion to approve that item with the stipulation that that comes before us again. Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, that's approved, okay? Then I have that right in front of me. What color is that one? Is that the other big purple one?
It's two further down.
Further down.
Second.
John, put that one up for us, please.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's in here somewhere. Some sort of challenge. Okay, on this one, I'm gonna read off of that. Okay. So the initial payment of $805.28 for the herbicide. And that's for the buckthorn blaster applicators, and native seed. That's it. That's just for, the application or just the chemical.
It's for the herbicide, the little bingo dabbers to put the herbicide on the stumps and the seed.
So it also includes their labor.
That does not include their labor. That's just for material.
Okay, just for materials, and then
Yeah.
we're gonna leave the 1694.72 to grant funds remaining for the project. So with that one, I would also like to have that brought before the board again when that comes up for that remaining amount. I would like to make a motion for that. Yes, sir.
I believe we already approved this. This is just a partial payment request. If
Oh,
I'm
did we
reading-
approve this
if I'm
already?
reading it correctly.
Yes.
Okay, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so nix that. And then we approve of item I. Do I have a second?
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's all squared away. Let's move on to Alyssa Thompson. What do you think? You ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Soon as I get to those. Oh, thank you. Yes. Yes. That's it. Yes, ma'am, go right ahead. Sir.
Can I ask a quick question first?
Yeah.
We have this list of, where does this go in our packet? Because it was stuck in with, is it part of Alyssa's?
Yeah.
Presentation?
Mr. President, Vice President, she's been including that with all submittals. And
Okay.
it doesn't show up on the consent calendar,
Okay.
but I've been putting it as the last item.
Got it.
of the review question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, please.
Okay, so this is like part 2 of last year's EMP program for 2020. So since we've been conducting site visits, which, as a reminder, the county provides funds for the initial site visits for landowners, up to 2 hours to spend with each landowner. And then funds from Valley Branch Watershed District cover the cost of designing and helping through the grant process after. But last year, 2024, we did 278 site visits throughout the county. And that number is actually a little bit low. We had 92 projects installed last year throughout the county. So of that 92, these are 89 of the projects that went in countywide. And we removed 337.5 pounds of phosphorus with those 89. This is Valley Branch specifically. So in 2024, the Valley Branch, we had 74 site visits and we had 33 turned into projects that were completed last year. The gray dots are a little bit hard to see. But I'm not allowed to change the color in our program, so I'm sorry. But this is where the 33 projects went in throughout Valley Branch. and we removed 15.5 pounds of phosphorus. And this is, since we've been tracking projects with the Conservation District, this is how many projects have gone in Valley Branch. And the amount of pounds removed is 2,722 pounds and 1,160 MPs. So just some random thoughts on the program. Considering if we want to make a bigger push to focus on shorelines, if we develop a more shoreline specific grant, maybe 50% cost share, 75% in prioritized water bodies.
Ms. Alyssa, can I interrupt you, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you give us a little more in-depth explanation of the increased implementation for the shoreline specific grant options, ideas, what you have in mind to share with us?
Yeah, if we want to focus more on shoreline work, maybe we could target shoreline landowners and offer them a more shoreline specific grant. Cover a portion of their shoreline. Shoreline work is quite expensive, so maybe incentivizing it a little bit more toward prioritized water bodies.
Okay, like, help me with this. Removing invasive species, yes, sir. Did you have?
Mr. President, I guess one idea might be at Lake Jane. Lake Jane is impaired for fish. And the DNR said one of the reasons it is impaired is because of poor buffer vegetation. So by having a grant that incentivizes landowners to improve the buffer, might help the fish population. And Lake Jane is a high priority water body for this.
And there
Okay.
are quite a few shorelines that are turned right up to be added. There's been excessive ice heaving this year that's really affecting, like Big Carnelian Lake. I haven't been around to our lakes in Valley Branch yet since I've heard of the massive ice heaving to see how they're doing. But they're anticipating a lot of phosphorus loading this year from the ice heave disturbance. in a
Oh,
lot of lakes
interesting.
around the county.
So if I could ask you another one, associated with this. These, items that you prepare for us. You also visit other areas within the Valley Branch Watershed District. It's not just, the convenience of Afton, and I'm not putting this on you, I'm saying you check out other areas, our northern border, the entire, Watershed District area. And the focus seems to be in what to me seems like West Lakeland Township and Afton mainly. Those are the, what's the nature of that? Are people approaching you? What's happening?
Yeah, we go, we're invited. We do a lot of outreach up in more of the northern area, but we're invited out less. And I don't know if that's just representative of more of the culture or landscape of that area.
Right.
Smaller properties, and some people don't like to have us out because we're viewed as government. I don't know if that plays a role. But we do go district wide,
Okay,
wherever we're invited to go out.
so obviously it's not just you, it's your,
Yeah, we have a team of, I think, 6 now on our BMP team, and we have 2 landscape architects that focus more on like the rain garden and more formal BMP practices. One that specializes more in shorelines. A coworker and myself specialize more in like the natural restoration part of it.
okay. So are you the lead by chance or?
I'm the lead for Valley Branch.
Okay, got it. All right. Rick, did you have a question or
I
comment?
do. Is there, you talked about the amount of phosphorus removed. And I guess I always have a hard time understanding what the impact is there, as well as having some kind of a metric that would tell us, are we 1% there? Are we 50% there? How do we gauge how big of a task this is, or how far we've made it so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's different phosphorus goals for different areas. The Lower St. Croix Partnership and the St. Croix River have specific phosphorus goals that we're trying to reach, and we do track all that. I think we're just starting to record the numbers for that this year, so I'm not sure exactly where they're at. All of the phosphorus numbers are based on calculations and models that go into some very specific programs that pump out numbers for us based on erosion and soil sensitivities and distance to water bodies, that sort of thing. I don't run all of them. I have some coworkers that specialize in that stuff, and we work together in running the numbers. I guess I'm not sure.
Do we actually see, a drop in total phosphorus, for instance, so that's one of the tests that we do, for monitoring. Do we see some success out of that?
That's also a good question. I would have to double check with our water monitoring team. I think there has been a couple of lakes that were delisted this year, but then there was some that were listed for other impairments, like sodium chloride impairments and that. I'm not sure exactly what phosphorus, I don't know.
Can I ask a follow-up? So I just want to make sure I heard your question. Did you specifically ask if we're seeing a drop in total phosphorus loading into the St. Croix?
Well, it would be both for the St. Croix as well as for individual lakes,
Yeah.
are we being
Right.
successful here, I mean, it'd be nice at some point to be able to say, okay, we've got this big cluster down around Afton. Is that around one lake? And is it having an impact for that lake?
If I could add to that, an example would be, or a curiosity on my part, is if we provide funding for a cost share for somebody who wants to create a phosphorus mitigation in a 12-acre patch, that's fine. But how do we gauge the phosphorus consumption or a phosphorus abatement, whatever that is, and where it ends up? To me, that seems nebulous and difficult, while I do understand that we are providing much more than just cleaning up the phosphorus, something that the watershed district managers have to look at. Chloride is another issue, but that what we're doing is beneficial in more than just, okay, we got to get rid of phosphorus. We're not just doing that. We're doing much more. Habitat, regeneration, et cetera,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, but it's an indicator.
Certainly a big indicator,
Mhm.
but we don't know at this point what those numbers are. We don't have anything concrete. And right now, that's a curiosity. I'm ignorant. I'm not an expert in these fields, but we want to use all the resources we have to be effective with the money usage and what we want taken care of. Sir,
I know, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've always operated on the assumption that if we keep soil from leaving a certain parcel of land and it stays on the land, whether it's a farmer or a residential property owner, then that soil and the phosphorus that's bound to it is not going to make its way into a waterway and then get transported downstream, where it's going to add to the loading of a water body that's going to receive it. So that's just kind of the assumption, right, that we've always operated under.
Mr.
So,
President, Vice President Perry, right, the numbers that Melissa has provided, they're like the phosphorus removed at that site. That doesn't mean that that amount of phosphorus has been removed from the receiving water body.
right,
Or we've talked about if there's a rain garden in Lake Emerald Village that reduces the phosphorus at that site by 1 pound, that is not removing 1 pound of phosphorus at downslope.
Oh, right. And that's one of our concerns.
the way we look at it at a higher level is that keep water on the land and keep it from moving rapidly downstream faster than it would naturally.
That's another, yeah,
So when we changed the landscape to impervious surfaces, and even turfgrass lawns that don't really infiltrate the way the native plant communities do, we're contributing to downstream movement of pollutants, whether it's phosphorus or anything else. So if we improve upland habitat, we're gonna, and if it's working, then we're gonna, in a very long time scale, we're gonna make benefits to downstream water bodies.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
okay, that's all.
The,
Yes,
the concept of
Yeah.
the, you know, the prioritized water bodies, maybe that needs further defining in terms of, you know, well, is it just the body of water or is it which areas are impacting the water body? You know, and so if we can focus in on areas that are, you know, contributing the most phosphorus to the lake, then, you know, it'd be nice to focus in on those because that gives us kind of the biggest bang for our buck.
this, if I could, did you have something?
No, that's fine.
Sir?
I did.
Because I was gonna add one more thing.
I was just gonna ask, I know it's a generality, I can't give an exact answer, but with the shoreline specific projects, you know, obviously you're right there, so delivery is virtually 100%, but what kind of ratio would those be as far as benefit versus what we're doing in the upland areas with the plant grants and that sort of thing? You know where I'm going with this. I'm just wondering if that's a much better bang for our buck on those projects possibly. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer to that question for, I guess, typically converting less area because it's a longer skinnier buffer, but it is a buffer that catches a lot of runoff from yards sloping down toward a lake, providing better habitat for reptiles and that sort of thing.
Reptiles.
So-
Runoffs, all that
And-
stuff is
Yeah,
different.
and you're envisioning mainly buffers and it would be erosion projects potentially also where,
It depends on the lake and the shoreline. Some
Yeah.
of them require both, and
Yeah.
some are much more simple, remove the turf, plant to native.
sure.
Some require riprap or wire logs and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if I may, so just so we have an understanding, you're not being grilled, just in case. This is food for thought. And everything that we're putting together here, there's a common goal, because we're seeing it more and more. We have an issue with the 3M money and our mandate, our 10-year, 10-year plan. All these things come together to create better care for our water, now our groundwater, drinking water, recreational use. That's what this is all about. So this is watershed district wide. So when we ask something, when we do something, it's not just one particular thing. Somebody has a garden and we get that they want to do something, but you know, it seems like if we give a bit of money to something that doesn't benefit as it might, and maybe I'm being unfair there because I want to include more area, not just one particular home, and all the other homes don't practice this, you know. It seems in the Afton area that everybody's more in tune with that because you have what appears to be a wealthier community with more properties. And so all that contributes to creating better habitat for upland creatures and ultimately for better water. So that's what's going on here. And so there's going to be more questions. Sir, did you have something else?
Maybe we have
Yeah.
enough data, I don't know. to be able to start to generalize a little bit about what the priorities are, ought to be. By, using Washington Conservation District's expertise and other expertise to figure out well, which of these projects were most effective. So it's kind of an additional task involved in doing the monitoring afterwards, that starts to identify, there's, 8 or 10 projects here that were particularly effective. What do they have in common? And use that as our criteria for setting priorities. Because then we start to focus in on, how we can use the limited funds. My suspicion is if we really looked at what impact we're having in, right now, it's an eye drop in the ocean, not to denigrate this at all, because I think it's important. But if we're dealing with that small amount of resource that we have to put to it for such a large area, then we really do want to be as effective as we can. So maybe at this point, we are getting to the level where we do have enough data to be able to start refining a little bit in terms of how we hand out our grants and make them available to people, so that we can be more effective with it.
I don't know if we have that. I completely agree with you. And I think that should be a future component. Maybe if the Water Conservation District does this, and us included with bar engineering that we use and other watershed district data, other watershed districts, that we can determine what the results are. Well, we've been on this project for so long, and what's happening? Like the rain gardens, for instance. What's happening? We're putting them on these properties, we're spending this money, and what's happening? Sometimes I've seen, and I've talked about this in the past when I was in a at-large status, when I came aboard the watershed district, that I went around and I saw, wasn't that a rain garden? And now it just looks like a bunch of weeds. I'd like to think that there's more to it than that, but I also understand that you can't run around and inspect every little piece of parcel and micromanage every little, because there's so much. So we can work something out, collecting data that'll help us come up with better answers. The fluoride situation is going to be one of those, if it hasn't started already.
I think, you're not alone in the assessment of rain gardens.
Okay.
I get a lot of calls back to rain gardens that folks aren't happy with, that a lot of them in, I don't want to knock on Woodbury, but in Woodbury, a lot of them went in and they haven't.
Tear 'em up. Yeah.
So there's a lot of complaints, and rain gardens have kind of fallen out of favor for that reason, because people are realizing they might be more maintenance than they thought, and a lot of them are in the process of being redone or revitalized because they kind of met their lifespan and
Sure.
haven't been maintained. So I actually haven't had a lot of requests for rain gardens lately.
Okay. Right.
Definitely like the concept of, adjusting how much, having the priorities and having the amount contingent on how much impact it is having, things on that. I think that's useful.
Yes.
And maybe that's some of what we ought to be doing, is looking at, well, how can we do that part of it effectively, as well as, what are the priority areas?
Yes, sir.
If we were to put a priority on shoreline projects, would our existing grant program that we have allow that, or is this something we need to actually make a modification to our grant program to allow that use of the funds. So I'm looking at John.
Mr. President, may I
Sure.
just- there, I can think of at least one in the last year, the order to residents on Lake Elmo, where there's a cost share program to do shoreline improvements. I guess I don't know what kind of, if that was a native plant grant or if that was a stewardship grant. And if it was a stewardship grant, I don't know how you calculated the phosphorus reduction.
That one was just a native plant grant. And right now, calculating the phosphorus for shorelines is mostly in the eroded shorelines, or we do the turf to native conversion calculator, which ends up being a very small amount, so then folks usually go for the native plant grant anyway, because it's less than $500 once you calculate it out.
So to answer your question, you wouldn't have to change it, but it sounds like if you really want to do shoreline improvement projects, you might want to change it to have a larger incentive.
Change policy or just provide more funding for certain things that we favor? Counselor?
I think you have a budget, so
Yeah.
it's directing Washington Conservation. It's your program. You can change your program. You can change the cost structure, reimbursement of
Okay,
it and leave it the same. I think all options are on the table.
Right, this isn't like your rules, right, that have a statutory process. This is something that you have created and have more leeway to modify. I mean, if there's a significant change, you may want to make that through a motion, but I don't know that, it's not like there's a huge process that needs to be
okay,
modified. Now, and what I'm saying with the motion is like a significant kind of change, right, in
Right.
how you want those funds processed.
thank you.
Then I actually have one more question.
Yes,
We've got a project, Farney Creek, that we've got a willing landowner who wants to do something, we've got a problem. But if we were to deal with that in our normal program, as a Valley Branch project, we would need to get easement over that area where the work is to ensure future maintenance. And that's a killer for the project with this particular landowner. I'm wondering if that is something, and if there would be any way to use the cost share or the, our existing program may be modify or tweak it or whatever, and have you folks do it as more of as a cost share program and take that hurdle of the easement off the table. I don't know. It's just something as I was going through the packet,
yeah, it's a good thing to look at.
jumped in the back of my mind, and I just wanted to lay that out there more as a brainstorming thing, I guess, but
Because we're prioritizing, we have this list of items
Yeah.
that we're gonna seek grant money for.
and that one, it's
There's a
right
few.
in, it's right in a waterway above Eagle Lake. So anyway.
Yeah, and your organization could potentially help us with this one and others. So we'll have to communicate more.
That might require a separate meeting, beyond this to flesh
Sure.
that out, see if there's any opportunities. But anyway,
Like a
it's just
workshop?
something I wanted to lay on the table.
You mean like a workshop?
Well, I don't know, or even a meeting separate. I don't know if we need a full workshop, but just to kind of, how would that work and what would we contribute and how would that work, go to get them covered.
Sir,
We've sent a number of good questions to Alyssa tonight that aren't easy to answer.
yeah,
And I think a workshop with water quality type engineers that are really deep into the weeds on this stuff that can help us get something more informative on an answer to these questions would probably be useful, I think.
I
I
think
think
it would be useful to also keep in mind the educational value.
always,
And,
yeah,
because I think there's so many different kind of components here that have the impact on how effective the program is.
Yes, sir.
And the education portion of it is, word of mouth. Angie was talking about it at this summer riverboat travel. It's like to be able to recognize that and to be able to encourage that type of
Yeah.
thing. Maybe that's part of
But two comments. Our water bodies are still being stressed by humans. They're being impacted. And if we can provide, especially a cost share program that will lessen that, then we should do it. That's directly in our responsibility as a water district to do that.
Okay,
The question is, what's the most effective way to do that? What's the most effective way? How do we get the biggest bang for our buck in doing that?
Yeah.
And then the second comment goes to yours about education, Rick. I think of it as kind of like social learning.
Mhm.
When South Washington started the rain garden program, the Kasha rain program for, like, that's not gonna go anywhere. People are gonna want their green lawns trimmed right to the curb with the effluent going right off the grass, right after Kemlon visited and going downstream or wherever.
Mhm.
Especially if there's old legacy stormwater pipes in the ground that shouldn't be there anymore, but maybe they're still there. But I was wrong because it was hugely popular. I didn't think it would be. They couldn't put enough money into it. And I think when people start changing how their world looks, others start to look at that and think differently about how their own property is. And they don't need to have green grass right down to the water's edge anymore.
Yeah.
There's a better alternative to that.
right,
So-
that's where the education
And
comes
that's
in.
the
We don't have to,
education, right?
we don't have to bring in some sort of enforcement component to how we achieve this.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have something, sir?
I was just going to say, this program is funded through your education budget.
Okay,
It's really meant as education.
Hmm.
It isn't funded through your water quality budget.
okay,
Because as been talked about here, even though it's great that there's been over 1,000 projects, it's probably not making any significant difference as far as water quality benefit to a water body.
I got it. So this is, yeah, so it's a big, how is it impacting our education? Is it through our website, through word of mouth? WCD,
I think it's all of the above.
all of the above?
I think, Washington Conservation District and MRAP have neighborhood meetings and a lot of press to promote these programs. But they can also find them directly on our website because they get pointed to our website.
Okay,
And again, I think to reemphasize my point, I think part of the education is what I refer to as social learning. People that are sitting there on, whether they live on Lake Elmo or whatever lake, and they don't know about, they're pretty naive about what they're doing to impact the lake. And then somebody a few doors down gets a grant and they change the buffer along the lake. Then they start talking, right? So when we give a project to somebody to change their landscape in a good way, the people around them are gonna learn about what they're doing. And if we're doing this at more and more places around the landscape in the watershed district, more and more people will realize that there's an alternative to the old way that we just mowed lawns, right? Have mowed lawn right down to the waterway, or whether it's a drainage ditch or wherever it might be.
And
It's changing the way people look at the world around them.
Mhm.
one other thing I guess I want to throw out there, I don't know that we need to feel like we need to pay 100% for these projects. My experience, my past life, if they don't have some buy into the project with some money or work or
Skin.
sweat equity or whatever, they don't have any skin in the game, the maintenance, well, that's the government's project. It's not my project. And, but if it's their project, then boy, they maintain them.
that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's
There should be that aspect.
the important two words are cost share.
I think, one way that some grants inspire neighbors and other people to also collaborate is through signs. And for some of the grants that you receive, you actually have to put up a sign saying that the funding came from this source. And we could do something like that for Valley Branch grants, whether it's along shorelines or the,
if that's something that's not too expensive, I'd love that kind of signage.
Yep.
You know, I don't want my face, Ed was in on this, don't do that.
method received in
Yeah,
your faith.
right.
Do we put a picture of it?
Preacher from the Black Lagoon. Okay, enough of that.
Well, we could develop a sign that this was funded by Valley Branch Watershed District, a little QR code to the website, and you can have it help people along in the education piece.
That'd be great.
Mr. Alyssa, please proceed.
Well, this is actually my last slide.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. All right, I thank you kindly, and thank you for listening to us. We're gonna see if we can hammer out, so to speak, something so that we can be more effective. So at this point, what's our next step? Mr. Engineer, we've been discussing this, the cost share program. And at this point, Ms. Alyssa had some requests. And they were for these, at this point, it is my opinion, and I don't know if the managers agree with me, but that we should leave things as they lay for now, because this is subject to change, like our weather. And many things can happen, you know, in a short time. So we might want to go for this. Something comes up, we might want to get involved in something, or you get my point. And so that's why I believe that things should remain that way. Sir,
I have just one request. I'm just wondering if we could have some future specific focused discussions on, number one, what would it take to increase the priority for shoreline specific projects?
that would be,
Personally, I really feel good about those kind of projects. And I think
they're important.
I think they're important. They have benefits. So what would we need to do to increase the priority on those? Then also, I'd just like to have some sort of follow-up discussion so it doesn't get lost on, is there a possibility in any way of working with the Conservation District on the Farney Creek project and have them handle that as an erosion control project?
On which project?
Farney
the
Creek,
Farney Creek thing.
we have a willing landowner, we have a pretty serious erosion problem above Eagle Point Lake, up by Lake Elmo. But he does not want an easement over the project area, which we would require if it's a Valley Branch project. But if it's Conservation District cost share project, they would have a 10-year, I believe it's 10-year maintenance agreement or whatever, but there's no easement.
I like that.
It's 10 for stewardship grants and 5 for the native.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 items, if you like, to examine, and we will also direct our engineer to either contact you or provide information or receive information from you so that something could come of this.
Do you want, like an official shoreline cost share proposal? Or,
I don't know how you fellows feel about that. At this point, I don't know if that's necessary. I think we want to formulate something. Come up with some ideas. Here's what we think, not necessarily a proposal. And then we could mesh that with what John says. Yes, sir.
I hear what you're saying,
Yeah,
the first item up there is very appealing to me because
of course.
it's going right at prioritized water bodies, and I think that's a good thing to do. It'd be good to, along with, like if we do a workshop so we understand it more, I think we should. I think that right now this is sounding kind of vague to me, and I think we need to really focus on some items that are actionable, that'll help us, inform us so we can make a good decision on this.
Yeah.
And my last thought was simply, what are the costs? Like if we did number one, what would the budget implications be approximately in an average year?
Right.
Would it would it require us to double our education budget? Would it just simply use the existing education budget more efficiently?
Yes,
So,
and that's why I'm suggesting that if they could come up with some ideas regarding this, we can focus more and then we can, whether it's pick and choose, formulate something more concrete with our added knowledge.
Yeah.
And the involvement of our engineer, that we can come up with something that's more concrete, and then we can make better decisions about how we're gonna go about this. But I'm all for it. I think we need to do that.
Just to give you, a ballpark on shoreline.
Yeah.
One without, like riprap or like coir logs, it would be on average between $8,000 and $12,000 to convert a shoreline buffer.
Okay,
If they hired a contractor. If they did it themselves, it would be significantly less, but in my experience, these are oftentimes projects that landowners are a little bit more wary of doing on their own.
right, you
Had
mean
to lift those
digging and all that.
can I ask just for clarification? So that would be 8,000 to 12,000 total project cost for an average shoreline project.
Okay,
And so
So
we'd be
there.
looking at somewhere like 50 to 75% cost share on that.
so there's one point.
Yeah.
We're headed there.
I mean, one of the things we could do is we could look at our budget and where we have flexibility inside the budget already established by the county, approved by the county, we can say, okay, we're gonna go with this and we're gonna allocate this amount to it for this coming year. And once it's used up, it's used up. We can look at it and consider how we want to do it the following year,
Right,
right? So maybe it'll get used up, maybe it won't, maybe there'll people waiting
Right.
to do it next year when the program starts a new year, a new financial year or
right.
whatever.
And also while we're figuring this out, there could be a climate factor, immediate or long-term, so that'll figure into our involvement in that particular thing, or we can do something else. But point is that we're pursuing it. So,
And we could target specific lakes each year too, if we wanted to do like a little pilot program this year and target one water body that we're really interested in working on. We could do
Yeah.
that first. It would, I think it'll be a little bit of a lift to get it off the ground and to get projects up and running. And if we
Sure.
started this spring, we might get a couple in by fall.
and,
Might
and-
even be
Yeah.
some criteria like, it's a steep slope or it's eroding rapidly or, things like that add to the prioritization.
Sure.
So if you've got ideas in that area, that would be helpful, I think, in terms of knowing, okay, here's some things that would bump up a project in terms of its priority.
Yep, I think for steepness, it would be like a 3-to-1 slope.
Uh-huh.
Would probably be a typical target. And if there's open soil, definitely.
Okay. So at this point, are there any further requirements? We discussed this. There's nothing that we put in motion. And I had a suggestion that we keep things as they are for now. There's no requirement beyond that, as far as I know. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Could we set some timelines for how we will continue the
Sure.
discussion of this? Because I don't want to let it go to opportunity to go to make it.
Yeah, we want
We're
to
not.
have it have impact this year.
We're not gonna let it go, and I thank you for pointing that out. So we can either schedule something amongst the managers, or we can set this up for revisit it, the first meeting in March. Is that, that's not too far off, I hope? And hopefully the weather will be warmer.
And in the interim, you'd like something from me to present.
Yes, ma'am, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, if you like, we're not, there's no pressure. Do it. I'm kidding. But you get my point that, that and we have something to look at and think about and incorporate. And then, our engineer is gonna help us with that.
I understood, maybe John was gonna talk to Alyssa after this meeting and talk about those two things. One, what it would take to make shoreline projects a priority. And two, just, is there any opportunities for Farney Creek? Where that was my understanding.
Thank you, yeah.
With Farney Creek, I think it's your policy. So if your policy right now is that if you spend a significant amount of money, you want it to be in a drainage easement. So
Yep.
it's protected forever. So whether that's through your maintenance program, or if it's through the cost share program. if it's through the
Okay, either-
cost share
either
program,
way.
It's only guaranteed for 10 years. So
Okay,
Well, it's something that we can consider, but at the very least, we can pursue it. Okay. Can we leave this now?
Do,
Is everybody, did you
do we
have
want to
anything else,
get
sir?
number two?
What's number
Also,
two?
let's modify the native plant grant so
Oh,
there's not a maximum amount per item. It seems like that's non-controversial, I think.
I don't want to change that at this.
You don't want to
point.
change it?
No,
Okay,
sir.
that's fine.
Again, I meant the entire thing, and so far, so good. Yeah, we can make those changes in the future, and they're looming. But at this point, it remains dormant, so to speak. The weather's a factor.
Okay.
All right, anything from any of the managers? Okay.
Nope.
So we're okay. Mr. Listener, thank you very much.
you.
We appreciate that. Thank you for
Yeah.
listening to us.
Thank you for coming
Yeah.
back and talking with us again.
Okay, obviously, when
Jack.
Quick question on the ice heave on Carnelian.
Yeah,
So is it because the shoreline, it gets exposed that we have bare soil and that's the concern about the increase of phosphorus? Is that the issue because of the erosion?
yeah, the ice heaves are pushing up and they're creating these big berms that are exposed soil on the inside of the lake. So now instead of the shoreline being this nice gradual thing, so like it's all vegetated, it's all pushed up and open on the lake side.
And then when we get wave action or wake, whatever.
on the west side, west side of the lake mainly.
You know, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Which lake?
This is on
Carnelian.
Carnelian.
Big Carnelian, but they're kind of
Or-
expecting it countywide that ice heaves are gonna be a bigger problem.
White Bear's got quite a few heaps. in it,
Really?
too. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of big lakes do. Well, just to see the ones on Mille Lacs,
Yeah, where they take out cabins.
you know.
yeah,
Oh, my God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, and if you got your phosphorus stored in the closet in the.
And that's it. All your fertilizer.
Thank
you later.
Thank you. Good night. Drive safe. Okay. That went, okay. I hope, the managers feel a sense of satisfaction with how we dealt with that. So, our next item, the, administrator engineer, the 3M PFAS grant. This is, we're looking at, I hope everybody had a chance to observe these. And we're just discussing this evening, correct? Okay, so very quickly, I'll add, and of course, I welcome discussion. I have some items here that I think are more important than others, and I set the criterion, if I'm using the word correctly, for these things as the immediacy or the priority in terms of, cleaning up our water. In other words, making water safe to drink, safe for wildlife and recreation. So that's where I came from. Anybody has anything, by all means, please. Yes, sir.
I found the criteria maybe a little bit vague.
Okay,
And am wondering maybe if you've got some feel for what direction this is gonna go. So it goes into, a big meeting. Any notion of how some of this will play out? I mean, so that we can maybe focus our priorities in part on what the priorities of the committee would be. Um, You know, I mean, it first of all kind of surprises me a little bit that it's not more focused on PFAS. But at the same time, it's a natural resource grant and that's fine. Is that the way it's gonna play out? Is it, you know, I circled ones that I thought were priorities too.
Yeah,
But the criteria that I was using was my own biases.
sure.
Rather than, you know, than some kind of criteria that may be successful here.
Mr. President, Manager Gilman, I don't have any inside knowledge of this. What's laid out in the memo as the three goals of the grant is pretty much all I know.
Mhm.
There are some water bodies in Valley Branch Watershed District that are listed as impaired for PFAS. So perhaps they would be better candidates if there's some sort of project related to alternative forms of recreation or something with those water bodies. For example, Lake Elmo is impaired for PFAS. So
Mhm.
if there's an opportunity to do something that would improve the habitat of Lake Elmo or improve recreation somehow of Lake Elmo, maybe that would score better. I don't know.
Mhm. Mhm.
That, yeah, that and Rose Lake, those are the two,
But I think,
among the tops, you know, the top ones.
you
Yeah,
know, Valley Branch Watershed District is unfortunately affected by PFAS more so than probably any other area, and way more than South Washington Watershed District or Rancho Washington Metro Watershed District. So I guess I would try to maybe submit as many grant applications or letters of interest for different projects as possible, because I
okay,
think Woodbury, Lake Elmo, and other entities are going to be chasing this money, but I really feel that Valley Branch was impacted the most,
Mhm.
and the communities of
Yeah,
Valley Branch
part of it.
were impacted the most, and they should have priority over other communities that were hardly impacted.
Mhm. Mhm. It may be worthwhile kind of using a bit of a shotgun approach in terms of, you know, submitting a lot of projects, but make sure that there's some of them that emphasize one of the three priorities. You know, at least one of the projects emphasizes each of the priorities and, you know, so we're targeting enough of it that we hopefully
yes.
hit the target that way.
Yeah, yes, sir.
One of our sticky challenges is bacterial impairment in Kells and Valley Branch, and what we have good reason to believe that's from dysfunctioning private septic systems. Could we get a grant? Again, we need willing, obviously, property owners. But
And I think that's one of, I think that it's,
Yeah,
I see
they
that,
had brainstormed that one in this list, both Kells Creek and Valley Creek.
and they're legitimate.
yeah, I mean, F and G, right? I'm just wondering about. I mean. I don't know, I'm torn over that one because there are probably some property owners that need to have septic systems replaced, period. And that's not a small price tag for anybody,
Right.
but there's nothing in state law that requires a dysfunctional septic system to be replaced
Until
if the
it's
property's not in the process of being sold.
Right,
Or if it's an imminent health problem, then I think the county can require them to replace it.
right, like they have a hole in the tank, exactly. Hey, what's that effluent? Yeah. Good to know. Right. So those are two, but you pointed out this shotgun approach, which is appealing in many ways, like shotguns. The point is that we send out our feelers, as you said, and we can apply for various things. Lake Elmo is certainly one. Rose Lake, those are the ones that I was thinking of, but the others are legitimate. And of course, Farney Creek, right? Could, we do something with Farney Creek, or maybe we'll be able to handle that with WCD? Maybe,
It's H on the list.
yeah.
I thought, the first one, restore Goose Lake, water quality.
We're doing that right now,
Looking
right?
at, right, but looking at it through the Gertens property and their pumping of groundwater
Right.
and PFAS contamination with it. Seems like that has some, it has multiple facets to it that maybe make it, both in terms of providing, fishable waters, but it also looks at some of the issues of PFAS.
Yeah, priority or urgency.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
I agree.
And, your comment earlier about, Rose Lake, boy, that's
Yeah,
that's a big one. Hmm.
yes, ma'am.
In this list, how many of these would the district be able to do without requiring permission from private property owners? Is that,
Oh, good,
is it all of them or is it some of them?
good
You know,
question. Tom?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they go through the list and rattle that off, but the goal tonight, I think, is really to get input from the board on if you have enough information, if you want to continue to brainstorm about potential projects and which projects you would like to potentially submit a letter of intent. Just because you do a letter of intent does not obligate you to do the project.
Right,
Mhm.
but, what, Counselor pointed out, Susanna, that, I think that's important because if we don't require permission from certain folks, something that we could attack.
I think what made me think of it was the septic systems. I mean, that's been on Valley Branch's radar for many, many years, and there was already an attempt to
It was a few,
entice
yeah.
property owners to get their septic systems pumped and possibly replaced. And there were only so many that were willing to do it. So I'm not saying that managers shouldn't. It was just something that popped in my mind as I.
no,
read it.
it's very good. John, please, pursue that. And,
Well, I don't want to spend your money in pursuing, getting
Okay.
permission from private property owners if you're not gonna get the money, if you're not gonna do the project.
right,
But that doesn't really, that's not a good use of your money.
Yeah, so look at L, right?
all right,
L is to partner with the county to partially fund inspections and replacements of failing septic systems. So if we get a sizable grant from the settlement to do that. If the average property owner with an old septic system knew that they could have their septic system replaced almost for free or for a large cost share, they'd be crazy enough to do that. I would take that in a second. I mean, my system is over 40 years old. I had an inspector before we bought the house. He said it could fail tomorrow. It could outlive you. So Lynn and I have set aside $50,000 to replace the bloody thing in case it fails.
is that where your grass is really green?
Right? I don't know. I mean, I think if we can do something like L with low risk, I mean, the worst thing that would happen is we got the grant on the settlement, and then for some dumb reason, no property owners wanted to do it.
Could happen.
Yeah. What if we were to, list out our top 5?
Okay,
So that would give a little more focus to what's here
Yeah.
and see if there's kind of agreement on some of them, and we don't need criteria or anything, it's just individually.
email them to John within.
Email the
a
top,
week. Yeah.
each manager's top 5.
Our homework,
And look at J is like totally low hanging fruit to me. I mean, That's an absolute no-brainer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. So there you have it. The top
We're
five
helping
sounds
out,
good.
we're helping out municipalities with the challenge of how the hell to get salting under control and
Yeah.
to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we may all agree, who knows?
So we're going to do that. That means I have to sneak away from the computer. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Keep this one.
Mr. President, Manager, if we have, I think plenty of time, I think, unless the letter of intent is due by April 4th.
Okay.
April 4th.
April 4th.
So at our next meeting, we can come with our 5 top choices.
Sure. And if, some of us forget, you can remind us.
Do we need a planner to help us put dots on?
Bring in Greggy. Greggy will help us out. Mr. Williams. Okay. Is that good enough, gentlemen? Is that appealing? Okay. Dan and Miss Tori, attorneys. Lady,
Nothing for me.
good? All right. Thank you. And we appreciate your input with those items earlier. Mr. Inspector,
President Rashon, managers, I did, it's been pretty light, frankly, obviously. We did have a warm up back in January 28th, so I took the opportunity to take a drive through existing projects. But there's one in particular I needed to check on. Karen Drive Apartments in Woodbury has started moving excavation and moving dirt. As we speak, they've been moving it. So I did go out and inspect to make sure they had erosion control in place because there's wetlands that surround it, and everything checked out fine, but I took the opportunity to drive through through some other projects just to see if there was anything, just some follow-up on some projects that we're kind of hoping would wrap up, but that happened, but and that's been pretty light.
yeah. Which I was gonna ask you about the one over here on 15. As a matter of fact, right by Counselor's office.
Oh, the Bridgewater Bank.
Right.
So that project, the overall development shut down for the season.
Okay.
The bank portion of it, they were pushing to construct the bank foundation and continue building the actual bank itself. There was some issues with the city because they had to cross there's stormwater work that had to stop. The city won't allow it
Okay.
to progress. And they were looking at some temporary solutions for stormwater in the spring. And so there's a lot of back and forth on some temporary things. Nothing's happening there. I'm not sure why they would go out there now. The frost is probably 3 feet.
Yeah, desolation.
And so it may be deeper because that soil's all been exposed. When you remove the turf and it's bare soil, it can go down quite a way. So I haven't seen any activity out there. John, have you heard anything?
No,
It's all scattered.
this temporary plan that Jeff is mentioning, the city of Lake Alamo and I reviewed it, and there's some back and forth, some meetings, and both the city and I have approved it. But that was, it seems like it was a couple weeks ago at least, and the contractor said they wanted to get going, I think, a couple Mondays ago, so I don't know what the status of
It's
it.
expensive to go out there and break frost and then put in footings and so forth. So maybe they're thinking more thoroughly about it.
Mr. Vice President.
I have a simple question about frost and the depth of the frost. Obviously, if you have no snow cover and it's really cold, the frost level goes deep. But if you have really low soil moisture in the fall, then there's less frost, right? That might go deeper. See what I'm saying? Like if you have really high soil moisture in the fall and then they get no snow cover and really deep freeze, the ground's gonna be like concrete, because the amount of water in there that's frozen.
I guess what I've seen from my experience in the field is when, if you had a field that's had cover on it and hasn't been disturbed, the frost will be less. But
Yeah.
once you remove that
Sure.
top,
Yeah,
like the topsoil, the vegetation, and then it's been bare for a while, it really drives deep. It can be 3, 5, be up to 5 feet deep.
yeah.
But I guess I don't know from a moisture content, the impact. It certainly seems like we had, I don't know, we had a pretty dry fall, didn't we? So,
Yeah.
yeah. There's certainly lots of capacity out at our landlocked basins when spring comes around, if we get any precipitation at all this year. So I don't think I should never say that. But don't say it.
Yeah.
Don't say it.
And some wood.
Sorry, I almost came out. Sorry, John. John won't sleep tonight. Please.
I got a phone call. Okay,
Comment about,
yes, sir.
about the 3M Oakdale, disposal site fencing.
Oh, yeah.
I assume they put the signs up at the end of the project. I haven't seen any signs.
No,
Right, we talked about that.
Yeah, I was driving around, so obviously they started it late last year with the fencing. I didn't see any signage
Yeah,
at all. I see material staged, probably to go back in the spring.
uh-huh,
I'm not sure. Yes, John.
So they obtained their DNR permit on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, the DNR rescinded the permit. So they do not have a permit from the DNR. They have been working with DNR representatives all along, saying it shouldn't be a problem to get this fence in, get permitted. They had even told the contractor that we expect to get the permit now and you should be able to go ahead, but so now it's been rescinded. The reason it was rescinded is because the DNR says it's part of the EAW project and you can't impact a wetland if it's gonna be part of a EAW project, even though you can say that this is phased, as first we're gonna do the fencing to protect the public from it, and then we're gonna do the diversion. The DNR apparently says that's the no-no.
Huh.
So I
For the whole
think they're
thing.
scrambling a little bit to figure out can we continue with the project or what part of the project can we do without?
I see.
I think some of the fence I saw that was installed wasn't in the wetland, but maybe it's all wetland there. I didn't know wetland, but it was on the perimeter on the west side and north side and not up near the water at all.
As we talked about earlier, no signs with skull and crossbones on it. Okay,
So,
thank you, Mr. Inspector, unless the managers have anything else. Thank you. Are your girls hibernating?
the bees are doing well. I've been out to check them a couple of times.
Really?
And, yeah,
You're happy when you open their door.
you have to be careful. They do come out. They do fly. And it warms up to
Do they
30,
fly like
40,
this?
They do come out. With plenty of lights. They'll come out. Yeah, you don't assume that they're not gonna come out.
Yeah, I heard they need 40 degrees to
40 degrees and they'll come out. Yeah.
see.
You don't want them to really come out.
No.
Because they might not make it back.
Yeah.
My neighbor, who's a new beekeeper, gave me about a pint of honey, so I'm accepting all donations until I get enough to make a sizable quantity of mead for you beekeeper guys.
Keep that in mind because sometimes you, like some of there's stuff that you can use. Like I've had some stuff I've extracted from, I'm sorry, the meetings.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
From like, instead of the honey supers, the tea boxes that the bees use, and that honey is usually, it's kind of dirty and sometimes it'll ferment. It usually ferments on its own. But that's good stuff to filter and use for making mead.
Really?
But,
Does
yeah,
it make skanky tasting
it's,
meat?
yeah, you can eat it, but it's,
But
you
if-
can tell.
So you could, are you telling me you can get drunk off eating some contaminated,
I think the fermentation, you can taste it. It's not, it hasn't turned into alcohol.
Okay.
You can just taste it. It has a,
Underproof.
I don't say it's sour, but there's something different about it.
There's an odor to it.
There's an odor to it, you can tell, yeah. The bees are all lovely, yeah.
That's fascinating. All right. Managers, Mr. Vice President. You have something for us?
On the legislative event,
Yes, sir.
we have a draft letter. John, is that that's ready to go out? Ed provided,
I did the electronic signature. That was good enough.
Both months.
Thank you, sir.
so we'll have invites out, and then in the letter, we told them that if they could join us on the 19th, that'd be great, or if we could meet them in their office on the 20th. Any of my fellow managers that want to do that on the 20th. I blocked the day in case we need to get invites. Otherwise, the letter also states, if neither of those dates work and there's some other time you would like us to come and sit down with you to talk about what the watershed does, then we'd be happy to do that. And so that's where we're at.
Mhm.
This is just for state elected representatives and senators. We do have a new county commissioner that we would like to also do a meet and greet with as well.
Yes.
Both Washington and Ramsey County.
Ramsey Bolt
Yes.
as well.
Mr. Karwoski.
So,
No, Victoria Reinhardt retired
Oh,
and, Harry Miller is the new
Okay.
person.
that sounds like a good thing to do.
I've spoken to her a little bit
Oh,
about
yeah.
that. Um,
so with the county
Alright.
commissioners, I mean, I'd be happy just by email to send her an invitation similar to what we're doing. And then you could maybe do the one for the Ramsey County Commissioner.
sure. If you wouldn't mind letting me, see the one that you do. So I know the kind of stuff to
Okay.
include and stuff, so. If that's okay.
Sure.
Mhm. Okay,
Very good.
okay. Sounds good.
Hey, Rick, very quickly, has Red Path's bill gone up?
Hey, what?
Their monthly, accounting? Did they?
Red Hat,
Off the top of your head.
I don't know.
All right, sorry, thank you. Just curious.
We do have one check in there that is not on the treasurer's, report. We ended up, it's from Ryan's companies and, they ended up sending us a check and, taking a bond out for their surety. And so we're returning the check to them.
Oh, okay. Easy
Basically,
enough.
or returning the amount of money.
Sure.
So, but that'll appear in next month's treasurer's report.
Okay,
Go back to the letter of invite. How
yeah.
does that state to kind of get back to us if they're gonna attend or?
I don't recall. I can review it, and if it doesn't say that, I can add that.
Maybe have that, and I don't know if you would want them to get back to me. Ed's signing it, it's with the president's signature on it.
Right.
You want to have them email back to me, Ed, or?
Email him and copy me. Is that good? Because you're our point man on this.
Sure,
Very good.
we'll just maybe add that right to the very bottom, John. Oh. Just email them the next week to see if we get any replies. Ed and I will report back. Is there anybody else that's attending the event on the 19th?
I won't be around.
I won't.
Well, you're gonna be in California. It's gonna be rough out
Okay. You gonna attend? Okay. I have board of directors at 1 and then the session starts at 3 with a reception and everything.
there. Fascinating.
Okay,
Very good, sir. Okay.
You're registered.
I did see that and I did get the event price. So my email, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Yes,
And do we want to talk about the special meeting?
It's on the agenda and I handed out the delegate form just so that's remember.
okay,
Which, for that future meetings? Okay, all right,
very good.
all right.
Okay, I will move on to future business. February 27th, and March 13th. We're gonna be here for that. No wild trips. Okay, just asking. You never know. Okay? And then hopefully Mr. Bill will be back. Legislative event on the 19th and 20th. We covered that. And the Watershed Special Meeting, the Park Event Center in Wake Park, March 21.
Okay, so what's happening is that, Minnesota Watershed is changing their process for resolutions. Because the way it works now, it's kind of clunky. They've done too late in the year, so it's gonna happen earlier in the year. Make a first call for resolutions, you know, like, oh, I think, I can't recall the timeline, but it might be like May. And the resolutions will be processed. But now the resolutions on legislative committee, they're being combined. The resolutions are used in part to set up priorities for the legislative session. So to make that, resolutions are gonna get submitted earlier in the year, they're gonna be processed earlier. And then sometime around August 1, there'll be another annual event for Minnesota Watershed members and their delegates to attend and to essentially approve the suite of resolutions that are gonna be forwarded by Minnesota Watersheds. And then what's gonna happen is we'll use that to establish our legislative priorities, and at the regular annual conference in December, as part of the business meeting, all the delegates there will review those legislative priorities, provide final comments, and they'll be tidied up. And so by the annual conference in December, the advice of LGM, the lobbyist, is that we probably don't want to fully set the legislative priorities until after the election. Because the election determines obviously the makeup of the House and the Senate. And that could cause us to want to tweak the legislative priorities a little bit. So that's how that timeline all laid out. So if you change the bylaws, which we're doing, the bylaws and annual operations procedure committee just met last week. I did not attend that meeting. And they formulated bylaw changes that will describe the new resolutions process and the process for establishing legislative priorities. To make a bylaw change, you need to have a special meeting of the membership of Minnesota Watersheds. So that meeting will be, what's the date?
21st, right?
March 21st in Wake Park, and we need delegates. So I will obviously be a delegate. Somebody else can be a delegate. I'll be charging my time to Minnesota Watersheds. They can, whoever is the other delegate can drive up with me to the meeting. We might be adding, the president, Brad Kramer, wants to say, well, can we add like some type of educational training thing in conjunction with this special meeting on the 21st? So we're not going all the way for just one thing.
Is it day event or is there an overnighter?
Well, that remains to be determined. I don't think we determined that yet. I've got a call with Jan tomorrow at 10.
The plan is not overnight. The plan would be one.
Yeah, Wake Park's an hour,
Right.
just over an hour.
Yeah, it's just outside of St. Cloud.
Yep.
So, so if one of my fellow managers are free on the 21st, we need a second delegate.
I usually do this.
All right, if you go, we can go to the cabin and do some long distance shooting the next day.
Now
It's
you're
really
talking.
close. It's really close.
I gotta go lobby my position, but that's actually very appealing. Very appealing, and hopefully it'll be warmer.
Yeah.
We might have Jeff. Jeff's not eligible, right?
No.
Darn. Okay. Good pay. You got there. Oh, they're paying. Okay, sorry about that.
When do we,
Very good, sir. But, we got a little timetable on that one, right?
I don't remember Jan saying a deadline on this, so you could probably decide at your next meeting, February.
Okay,
As long as it's, I mean, it's so gets to the month.
make a
I
note.
think
to
the
bring it
point
up.
is that in order to hold the meeting, you need a quorum, so there needs to be 44 delegates, something like that.
yeah, we're establishing those bylaw changes are, and it's, hasn't been cast in stone yet, but we're trying to figure out what the quorum should be for that special meeting around August 1.
But still, right now, you're under the current bylaws, which.
We're sticking to the same quorum we had for the annual meeting, and that's 44. So,
Okay,
now, the weird thing is the annual meeting, you get all these delegates that go, and then like at the caucus meetings, like some of them aren't even there. And they may not, so that's why you need a certain majority of the delegates established to actually be there to establish the quorum. Just like we have 5 managers, so we need at least 3 to have a quorum, so. All right, I'll ask Jan, I'll confirm that it's just one day, and then I'll ask her if there's a timeline for the delegates.
Friday. I don't know. Is it
The
March
sooner is
24th?
always better with Jan, because even with the annual meeting, she has to remind people constantly to submit their delegate.
Right.
I'm available that day if need be.
Well.
I'm sorry,
I'm available that
Okay.
day. I mean, I don't have anything
okay,
on my,
I'll sit in the back.
I haven't checked with the boss, but
Yeah, exactly. What day is that? Does anybody know? if it's
Friday.
Oh, it's on a
Right.
Friday? Holy cow, that's looking good.
if you do, well, shoot.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Hey, I didn't say. Oh, my goodness. All right. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. I have one more item. Motion to adjourn.
second,
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
I.
Hi.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.